Hello, welcome to the Backpack Show. We have a very exciting episode today, but first of all, let's acknowledge we have a very special guest host. It is Backpack Show sponsor, Chloë Forbes-Kindlen. Hello, Chloe. Thanks for joining us
Hi,
today.
I feel like I'm getting the VIP pass. Usually
You're
I
so funny.
comment. Now I get to ask questions live.
Look at this. Chloe is a Notion expert, but more importantly, she's a business systems expert. So hit her up after this. You can go to businessops.co, I forgot you're from Scotland, /backpack and get your Notion starter kit. But you're going to have a whole lot of Chloe before today is over. So today this episode is for anyone who's ever been in a career and thought, this is it. I made my bed and now I have to lie in it. No, you absolutely don't. So Chloe, do you want to talk about who we're talking with today?
Yes. So today we have Robert Markowitz, who has had such an interesting journey through life. He has gone from being a lawyer, something you know about, Kerry. You've also gone through career pivots, all the way to becoming a clown, a children's musician, and a novelist. And
And
there's
he's a
been
Duke
all
law grad. Like
yeah.
other law
I
grads
mean,
want to be that. So this is a
yeah,
very interesting career trajectory.
it's so fun because so many like there's the career path you think that you want to follow, the right one that society says. And I think it takes so much courage to go another way. And so I'm very, very excited that we've got today's guest.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry O'Shea Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Are you like us? Did you look at someone? Because I looked at Horacio Garcia Rojas, who is like a
Oh,
Mexican horror comedy actor. Who'd you look at?
yeah, I did it. I just was like, ooh, people, all the people. You have to remember, this is like a new experience for me. Like
Well,
usually
I'm
I'm
super
with
excited.
everyone.
Well, we have to get Robert out here. Let's do
Yeah.
this. Robert, thanks for joining.
Oh, my pleasure.
Listen, we have questions, and not for the least of which I'm also a recovering attorney. So this is of great interest to me. So many questions. First of all, why law school in the first place?
Well, I mean, I think that my parents definitely had a strong preference that I do that. That was one thing, but and I had the ability to do it, which sometimes is a problem, you know. But the other thing, I think the clear thing is that I was trying to impress other people. That I was aware even at that time that that wasn't really who I was, and that wasn't really optimal for my personality. But I wanted to be important. It was an ego thing, I think, most of all, and I didn't have the courage to do what I really wanted to do. I didn't have that courage.
Courage. Can you relate, Chloe?
Yeah, yes, definitely. But it's interesting that you talk about ego and then you talk about courage. Because often, like, we think of ego being the thing that gives us courage rather than being the mask. And I find that really interesting, especially with where you went on to become, a clown and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that? Especially because throughout your interviews, you talk about identity. So the relation to identity with that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that you absolutely hit it on the head. I'm talking about ego as a mask. That's a perfect name. And yeah, just to be brief about it, I'd say that the truth is it took a lot of suffering for me to get to where I went. It takes a lot of suffering to pierce that mask, and I was a lawyer for 4 years, and I was pretty damn depressed after those 4 years, and all of a sudden I was much more amenable to doing something that I really wanted to do because I just was so depressed. I feel I have nothing to lose now. Might as well do what I want to do.
Yeah. It's kind of
So
like the empowering part of rock bottom.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
yeah, but still, So there's people that are like, maybe criminal defense isn't the thing. Maybe I'll try real estate,
Yeah.
adoptions.
Oh, sure.
You completely changed everything and end up eventually back at your mom's, looking in at the classifieds and deciding to answer one that's looking for like children's birthday party clown or something.
Yes, exactly. It was about as low status as you can get. And it was like these guys are real schlock, if you know what I mean. Like you go down there to get your clown training, and they'd sell you this $59 kit that had all these clown tricks in it, and the wig and the shoes, and then they'd send you out on very low paid birthday party gigs as a birthday party clown. So you cannot get any lower status.
You had to buy the kit.
You had to buy the kit. Sure. This was a money-making enterprise.
Okay.
You can't get any lower status. I went from, consulting in chambers with judges about the fate of all sorts of people who were in the gallery. And then, that was an important job. And I went to, going down to a basement to entertain, 3-year-olds.
So, but something worked for you about it, clearly. Like something clicked with you and you were like, I love this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when I read that ad, and this was way back before the internet, where the ad was in the New York Times. And even when I read that ad, I kept on reading the want ads, and it was like office job, office job, office job. And then I read this, and I felt, again, I was depressed, but I felt like some kind of energy coming up when I just even read it. And I think what it really turned out for me is that I love spontaneity. I love a job where I can be totally spontaneous. And that I saw the possibility of that in this kind of work.
Kids have to be a lot more fun than judges.
Oh, yeah. Definitely toddlers are more fun than felons.
Ouch.
Speaking of kids, you talk about this moment where you're at your first party where a kid comes up to you and says, "I love you, Bobo." Yeah, and you talk about that being such a defining sort of moment where you just knew something clicked. Can you talk about that and what you got in that moment, either what you were thinking or what you were feeling in your body that you didn't get from law?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say about law is that you're sort of trapped in this rational, empirical box in your brain, in your mind. So you're trapped in that box and you're living in that box. And honestly, when I was a lawyer and I wasn't married and I didn't have kids, I almost never saw a child. I was completely in this adult world, dealing with the rational and dealing with, 1 + 1 = 2 and that kind of thing. So when I did that party, and it was my very first party, I didn't know what to expect. And I was just basically doing the thing that came natural to me, and I had no experience. And I was, to be honest with you, very depressed at that time. I really was not a happy camper. And after I had that experience and I was alone in my car, I felt something. And I realized that it was the first time I had actually felt happy in a very long time. And that was like, whoa, I feel happy, So that made an impression on me.
Yeah.
What did Mom say about all this?
Well, mom never liked it. I mean, even when I had, she lived till like 87 years old. She's not alive anymore. And certainly she was a good mom and provided for me and, did her job. But she never acclimated to my decision. Never. She never did.
You liked having a son that was a lawyer.
Yeah, and she felt that she had expected more out of me, and expected a higher level of success from me, which
You're
I
bringing
had.
joy to
Yeah,
children, Robert.
Yeah.
yeah, I do that, and that's something that's very natural for me. And now, when I was at that party that we were talking about, I was completely inexperienced. Now I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm really good at it, and I still have that ability to relate to children. So, yeah, I do bring a lot of joy to children, and that's great. And it gives me a lot of pleasure too. I never go into a show and think this sucks. Never.
Meanwhile, you had plenty of days, I imagine, when you went into the office as a lawyer where you thought this kind of sucks.
Oh yeah.
Very relatable.
Yes.
So lest anybody think that this is all you've done and what you do, and this is kind of the one thing, you also have become Robert the Guitar Guy and written a book. So we should talk about both.
Thank you.
You pick which one first.
Well, Robert the Guitar Guy is basically the children's music that I do. The book originally was going to be a sort of memoir about my career change, which was exactly what we're talking about right now. But as I was writing it, I realized that to accentuate the themes that I really wanted to accentuate, the themes of courage and joy, that I really needed to fictionalize it. So there's a love story woven into it, and there's all the attributes of fiction. And the book is called Clown Shoes, and it's
a teensy bit darker than what we're talking about, because the lawyer in the book isn't just one day like, you know what, I'm going to do something more fun.
No. You know why? Because, once you start to get into writing and fiction, there's something called an inciting incident. And, if your inciting incident is, well, I kind of don't like being a lawyer, and that's not very gripping to an audience. The inciting incident is had to be something more gripping. So that's why there's some darkness there. People have to relate to why you wanted to leave law. And,
the stakes have to be higher.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting when you're talking about it, because you're talking about all of the different stakes. How much of it was it a case of you integrating maybe feelings or parts of your life and then finding a way to fictionalize them so that people could really translate the emotion versus it being completely fictional and made up?
Well, that's exactly right. Let's face it. Sometimes when you're reading somebody's story, you're like, I should be paid for reading this. I don't want to be this guy's psychologist. I ought to be paid for this. So you've got to get by that. You've got to present something to an audience that they can relate to, that they can grab onto, and that's going to allow them to kind of put themselves in that position. And so there's a lot of work between, having your story and then creating a story that's relatable and that's fun for the audience. Yeah.
People who know you would be interested in your story, but not kind of
right.
One else.
or my shrink, one or the other.
You were diagnosed with ADHD in your early 50s.
Yeah.
Does that put anything into perspective for you?
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain things. I think ADHD is a two-edged sword. Like, on the one hand, for me personally, I have trouble dealing with organization of things. In fact, organizing my novel took a long time. I had to really work on it. So, for me to say, I once had a stint as a teacher, and for me to say, have a lesson plan for 7 lessons I have to give that day, along with materials for each of those things, and have to coordinate all of that stuff, that's very hard for me. Now, on the other hand, if I'm taking a test and it's all there in front of me, I was always a very good test taker. So you have your skills and you have your deficits. If I'm in front of a children's audience and I have all my puppets and I have my guitar, I'm set. I know exactly what to do and I know exactly where to take them. And I have a very good sense of what's needed in the moment. Even as a lawyer, I had that. Like I almost could anticipate what the opposing lawyer was going to say. So that was helpful, but it wasn't. The organizational aspects of being a lawyer were very challenging for me.
Yeah.
Chloe and I were just talking before we went on air back in the green room about how some people do really well, like impromptu, and other people need to be prepared thoroughly and know exactly what's going to happen and exactly when.
Yeah.
What do you think that has contributed to your career overall? Because it seems like you're great impromptu and not everybody is.
Yeah.
Like, could someone else who feels more plan oriented still blow everything up and become a birthday party clown if they want
That's
to?
a great question. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of my wife. Okay. So my wife was a middle manager in a pharmaceutical company. And she was doing like 3 people's work. She's a very, responsible person. But it was basically destroying her little by little. And this was before I met her, actually. I met her just when she was about to make a change. And so she did it, like the way I did it was really sloppy. Like I ended up at 37 years old living at my mother's house with no source of income. That is not a neat way of doing a career change, but that was my way.
I mean, it's fast.
It's fast. Yeah, right. She set things up in her transition to becoming a psychotherapist, which is what she's been doing now for a good 20 years, and she's very successful at it. But she set things up very carefully, and she never had something where she just jumped off a cliff, while I did. So I think that was the way that a very organized, planning-oriented person does it. But you can still do it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chloe? Are you jump off the cliff, or are you plan and?
I am the planner. I am the resisting. I know the change is coming, and I'm resisting it all the way. But I find it so fascinating when I hear stories like yours, Robert, where it's almost like your life sort of, not to catastrophize it, but it feels like it kind of blew up all at once. And
Yeah.
You're sort of at home, you're 37, you're broke. You've mentioned that your friends all left. And it's easy like now to look back and be like, oh yeah, I did that. I overcame that challenge. But actually in that moment, it is so hard. And you said yourself that you were really depressed at that time. How did you keep going in that moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was starting to get into kind of a non-religious spirituality at that time, and I'm still very into that stuff. I mean, I'm into it for decades. But what I found out, honestly, Chloe, is that meditating itself was not going to get me where I needed to go. Like I would meditate and I would think, okay, it's going to come to me a full-blown understanding of what my next step is. It's all going to come to me. And that never happened. I had to experiment. And so I took different steps to experiment. I put myself into different situations. And that's what actually got me out of the depression and got me into things that I was interested in.
Sounds kind of like permission to
more the
play.
cliff.
Yeah.
The cliff is more my style.
Same.
How about you, Kerry? Are you like jump off, or are you resisting it?
I am definitely, I'm an interesting mix because I'm a planner in just about every area of my life. I do plan, but also I will just like jump out and grab the parachute on my way.
Yeah.
A little bit of both. Yeah. But what were you going to say, Chloe? You said permission.
Yeah. It sounded like what you were throughout your whole journey, actually, over and over again. It's almost like permission to play. And it's so interesting to me that you work with children as well who are, they know how to play. as adults, we don't know how to play.
That's a great word.
Yeah. What would you say to everybody watching, who mostly adults, who maybe are struggling with that permission to explore, to play, to figure it out, to not have it all planned out?
Yeah, I love that word, Chloe, play. What I could say about that is that I grew up with a very playful father. He was unlike almost any father that I encountered for my friends. He really knew how to play. And both my brother and I learned how to play, and we both went into very playful things ultimately. But as a lawyer, that was pretty much all crushed out of me. I had become this totally unplayful thing. You do become what your profession is. You do eventually succumb, and you become that. And so I'd be lying to you if I said that immediately I was able to escape that trap that I was in. It took a while for me to reclaim that playfulness that was sort of my birthright and was my childhood. I had a pretty happy childhood, so I knew it was possible to be happy. That was helpful.
What is next? Are you get back to law? Like, what's the next thing? Or gonna start your own circus? Like, what are we looking at?
It's funny you say back to law. I remember when I was courting my wife. I've been married now for like 25 years, but when I was courting her, she said, "Well, you are going back to law, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I hope that's not a deal breaker." But what's next? Well, that's a good question. You might, for a while, children's music was my passion. Now, I still really enjoy doing it, and it's become, my source of income as well. But I could honestly tell you, it's no longer my principal passion. So you find other passions, and I've written a musical for adults, and it's sort of based on Clown Shoes, the book, but now me and two actors, singers have been performing this musical. I've also written another book, which you can find on Amazon. It's I don't even remember the name of it now, but it's basically the deeper meaning
Your own
of
book, Robert.
I know it's terrible. It's basically about the deeper meaning of 60s and 70s pop songs. So I'm getting together with other people. I think my path right now is collaboration. I've always been a solo guy. As a lawyer, I was a solo practitioner. As a guitar guy for kids, it was just me. And right now, my path is collaborating with these women doing this musical play, collaborating with other musicians doing this deeper meaning of pop hits of the 60s and 70s. So that's my new path. I think you got to continue to find what, really turns you on.
Robert, you've brought us to an extremely important part of the show.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
This is exciting for me because I never get to pick the person of the day, but I'm going to pick the person of the day. I don't know your actual name, Humber Tory Bera 5016, but you are our person of the day because you've been so consistently engaged throughout, and because I agree with you, the cliff is more my style. So this gets you one free apple. All you have to do is go into any handy bodega or supermarket and steal it as fast as you can. I do recommend washing before eating and ideally baking it into a tartlet. So congratulations to our person of the day.
All right, Umberto.
Is sponsored by Fazia Burke, who was a book publicist and now is doing a lot to help folks in the publishing industry use AI. So if you're interested in that, go check out Fazia's Substack, faziaburke.substack.com. Fazia is still to this day like one of the coolest names I've ever heard. Chloe, it's time for the one question that everybody who comes on the Backpack Show must answer. Would you like to ask it?
What's in your backpack? So this can be something physical or it can be something metaphorical. What's something physical, Kerry?
Ooh, DJ Cumberbund from YouTube said an extra set of teeth, because you just never know. So you put extra set of teeth into the backpack for success.
You guys are way out there, I tell you.
Well, DJ Cumberbund is out there. If
you should have had Chris
physical,
on here. Yeah, that would have been out there.
he has talked openly about his ADHD as well. Chris has, so I was really looking forward to having the two of you in one room. But something physical, it could be an avocado, it could be a journal, it could be anything at all. So what goes in your backpack for success, Robert?
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to choose the metaphorical. I'm going to go for courage. What I didn't have when I was very young and starting out my career, and what I think developed now, courage to actually go after what excites you and what turns you on. That's what so that's in my backpack now, but it wasn't then.
Well, you clearly found it.
I found it eventually. It took me, I'm a late bloomer.
So go on Amazon, look for Robert Markowitz. There's a book there. We don't know the title of it, but if it's the same author as Clown Shoes, that's the one. And go check that out. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. Chloe, thank you for co-hosting with me.
It was so fun. I'm so happy.
Kicks, Chloe, what are you going to put in the backpack for success? Because I don't think we've ever gotten to find out what you would put in.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Only a little. You've only seen like every episode of this we've ever done. So
yeah, I think what I would put in the backpack is a mirror, maybe.
That's good.
Is that like some deep spiritual meaning, or you just need a mirror to like touch up yourself before you go on camera?
I think it's like a good way to look at yourself. We don't look at ourselves very often, and a lot of times we don't want to, and that can be physically, but it's usually something internal. So I like the idea of a mirror because it makes you go inward.
I'll tell you one thing I've learned during this interview. Chloe is deep. I'm telling you the truth. She is.
Yeah, I am not. And Chris, if he were here, would have cut her off so that people didn't get to hear what she said, because it was
I thought you were going to. I paused.
No, absolutely wouldn't.
I didn't have anything funny, but I've always wanted to say that. So
I wanted to know, because one time he actually was